Hello, this is Harry Paden. I am the host of Paden's Pulpit. This is season 1, episode 22. Season 1, episode 22. And this is the 55th anniversary of the start of the Newark Rebellion, 1967 Newark Rebellion. Some call it the Newark Riots. Personal memories, because I was in the midst of where it happened when I was a teenager. So hopefully I can give you the details. Never forget those days. There are some people who will go nameless, but they're kind of ashamed of from whence they've come because they've cracked society's level and made it. Well, Harry Paden, I also cracked it. I've traveled the world, 3 continents, China, Russia, most of Europe, most of the United States. That's not a brag, that's a fact. And most of the time I traveled on someone else's dime because I was always into educational pursuits. But I come from very humble roots. I was born in Harlem, New York. Harlem has its rich history, but Harlem is also an impoverished area of New York City. It's part of New York City, Harlem is, but I was born there. And my family moved out of Harlem when I was in the 4th grade, so quite young. And we moved to Newark, another area that has some segments of people living in poverty and despair. And that's where we bring in the 1967 rebellion. I refer to it as a rebellion because it's like a pot that you boil too long, the pot boils over. And the conditions in 1967 were rife for boiling over. Racism, uncontrolled, police went around beating up people anytime they wanted to. There were no black or very little black officials, council, mayor, school boards, none of them. They were all reflected color of people that were not the majority. So it was pretty frustrating for many of those people at that time. But what triggered the 1967 Newark Rebellion? Well, on July 12th, today is July 12th, that's why it's the 55th anniversary. July 12th, 1967, police, as I mentioned, and as it was a normal thing to do, decided to beat up a man who was black. He happened to be black. He was a cab driver, and that's how they get their thuggery out. You know, at times those who are not followers of the law brutalized the law. You know, many of them were bullied when they were kids, so they take it out because now they have a badge, gun, and nightstick, and it's always a bunch of them. Well, they beat up this cab driver, and it was right near a housing project. I lived in the Scudder Home projects in Newark, New Jersey. Scudder Homes consisted of Mercer Street, Lincoln, Howard, Broome. Those were the projects, and they were, you know, quite a lot of people living in a small area, but that's where we lived. We thought it was great. You know, we didn't know we were impoverished. You had thousands and thousands of people living on very little square footage. The merchants, Prince Street was one of the main thoroughfares that we shopped at, a block or so up from the projects, mostly Jewish merchants, and our parents used to always tell us to beware because they were quick to take advantage of us, particularly us youngsters. But this beating up of this black man by the police started a rumor. And you know how rumors go? They beat him up, they beat him up, they beat him up, they did this, they did that. Soon the rumor turned that the police had killed this cab driver. They did not kill him. They beat him up pretty bad. And that was kind of a fuse that, when you get like the boiling pot, you get so, ooh, you have to do something. And what the something was, someone took a brick. That was a bold person. They took a brick and they took that brick and broke out the police station where the cab driver was being held, and they broke the window. And it was a lot of people gathering, and they just started, next thing you know, another brick, and then it ventured from that area. The police, of course, came out, showed their force, and chased them from their dear police station as they did. But then the people being chased from there went to other areas, and guess what? Prince Street was part of that area. So they walked past these stores, and someone again picked up a brick or a rock, and they broke the glass to a store. And when they did that, all heck broke loose. Free stuff. There were no bars on the windows at that time. Bars weren't something that people had on their windows. And people went in and started taking stuff. And wow, that's how it started. Now me, again, I lived in the Scudder Home Projects, really a block or so from where it all happened. I didn't know nothing about that at that particular time. But all of a sudden, I saw people running. And I was playing basketball right in front of my, where I lived. And they started running. They was carrying stuff, man. There was clothes and TVs and all kinds of stuff. Like, whoa, what's going on? Where did they get that stuff from? I said, Prince Street, everything's free. So me, being a stupid 14-year-old, free stuff, I ran to Prince Street. Didn't tell my mother I was going to do it, but I ran to Prince Street. Got in through the glass. You had to make sure you didn't cut yourself because the glass was hanging and everything. Grabbed me. You guys know how I am. I'm a fashion guy. I grabbed me a bunch of fancy-looking shirts, a couple of hats, and some pants. All I could carry, and I was running. I ran back to my project apartment where my mother was. She never knew I left. And I said, Mommy, here is some free stuff on Prince Street. The windows were broke. My mother, as a good mother that she was, but thought she was crazy. At the time, I thought she was crazy. Said, boy, if you don't take that stuff back around that corner, wherever you got it from, and put it back in the store, well, I can't tell you what she would do because diapers might come for her, though she's no longer living. My mother didn't play. And I went. My intentions were to give it to somebody and say, my mother crazy. She didn't let me keep my stuff, and that kind of stuff. But luckily, I turned around, and Mrs. Paden was right there with her arms just like this. And I knew the next stop was back to the store. Get away! People were trying to take it from me. No, you couldn't take it from me because take a beating from me. I wouldn't take a beating from my mama. You guys, y'all can't fight like my mama. Took it back to the store. That was part of the integrity of what I learned. I'm not a thief. My mother taught me that even though we didn't have, we don't steal. Well, from that, it was the first day, and everything was, broken up. A lot of vandalism. It happened all night long. I didn't see most of it because my mother called us inside, and we did not go back outside. Mommy didn't play. But there was a lot of pent-up frustration, a lot of pent-up grief. So that thing went on for hours and hours, and the police weren't able to control it because it was a lot of people. Again, the projects, I would imagine Mercer Street had to have 34,000 people living in there. There were 6 buildings. 6 buildings on each side, so 12 buildings. And it went from the first floor to the 12th floor, whatever it went. And the apartments went from A to M, a lot of families, a lot of people, a lot of destruction at night. The city was in flames. A lot of things were going on. Then the Governor Hughes, with his different kind of self, the Nixon type, we're not gonna take this barbaric thing. You know, he didn't say anything barbaric when the police were beating up people. Barbaric stuff, and he started to try to use force, and the police were losing. They were losing every night. More and more destruction. The 12th, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th. Somewhere after the first 2 days, they called in the state police. They were losing because there was a lot of people, and it became us against them. Well, I say us. I was inside, so it wasn't really me. But that was how it happened, and we, in essence, destroyed the cities, and they called it a riot. They called it a riot. We just rioted. But it was frustration. Frustration. The act was a riotous act, but it was a rebellion. You can't beat down, if you own a dog, particularly dogs, and you beat that dog, that dog gonna take it. One day that dog gonna attack you. Most of you know it's true. So that was what took place over those 6 days. But finally, how they got it under control, they called in the National Guard, the guards, soldiers who, protect our country against ourselves, insurrection, anything like that. So the National Guard came in with their big baronets with I'll never forget, because they had the thing you stab somebody, like a knife on the end and everything, and they got things under control, because again, they're the army. They had free reign to do whatever they want. Go in there, do whatever you want. And people realized that, okay, a lot of them, and they got it under control. Finally, the end of what happened was the destruction was the whole Prince Street. All the stores were ravished, whether it was appliance stores, meat stores, clothing stores. Everything was broken into, and they were taken. And the owners, seeing this 6 days of destruction, did not come back to those stores. They knew better than to come back, because they knew it was a terrible situation for them. Again, they happened to be white. Most happened to be Jewish. And they did not come back. And it took almost probably 40 or so years to finally get that area rebuilt. It started under Mayor Sharp James. He did a lot to revitalize it. Then Cory Booker came, and now Ras Baraka. And they have made those areas look like you would never know there were things that happened. There are apartment buildings there. The stores in the downtown never got touched. Downtown was downtown protected. Downtown is always downtown. So the little damage that was done downtown, as always, they protect the money makers, and who can blame them? But that was the Newark Rebellion. And again, you'll hear it under the name of the riots. I don't talk about myself, in the terms of what they say. I'm intelligent. I went to Central. I graduated Central, went on to American University. It was a rebellion. Now, I am a firm believer of living well is the best revenge. And, out of Harlem, out of Newark, the projects in Newark, I'm a project kid, proud to say it, because I'm intelligent, world travel, sophisticated, not a jailbird. I have lived the American dream. I am now retired, own a company that I work when I want to work. My children are all successful. My grandchildren are now successful, and their children, my great-grand, will be successful. We carry on the legacy of Mr. and Mrs. Paden. My mother taught us integrity, what to do, even if thousands around you are doing the wrong thing. But today marks the 55th anniversary of what turned out to be the Newark Rebellion, also known as the 1967 Newark Riots. Living well. Living well is the best revenge. Did I tell you I drive a sports car? A nice, beautiful sports car. I'm retired. But living well is the best revenge. Embedded in all the materialistic things that I have, and I have a lot, is that my children are doing well. College graduates is the norm. My brothers and sisters have children who are doctors, masters, or any part of it. And we were a large family. There were 10 of us. There were more, but 10 who survived and, lived on to raise their children. And my mother died. I have brothers and sisters who weren't even 10 years old. 4 or 5 of them who weren't even. But my dad raised us all even after my mother died. So my legacy, my family's legacy, and many of my friends who grew up in those projects that survived, we lived well. That's my best revenge. We saw things. There was a young boy that I knew, we all hung out together. He was looking out the window, and someone said, "They're shooting!" And they, National Guard shot up and shot him in the eye. Thank God none of that happened to me. I witnessed it, and my testimony is that that's why I speak to today's youth, because I let them know I got my sports car, I worked a job, I traveled all over the world, I raised my children, and I'm not a gangster. I'm an educated black man, king from kings of Africa, and I know my history. To God be the glory. Do some research. When they say riots, cross it out. It was a rebellion. You can't treat anyone the way they were treating us. And you saw January 6th, that was a riot. There was a difference. To God be the glory.